successful mission, and it has cleared the tower.
73 seconds later, disaster strikes. 7 astronauts die in front of their families and millions of television viewers.
Our hearts were shattering, much like those pieces that were falling from the sky.
What really happened during that fateful flight? Was tragedy inevitable? Or could the shuttle and its crew have made it into space?
Blow up the shuttle, kill the astronauts, but it would blow up all the launch pad facilities also.
Beaujolais' evidence stunned the commission. He revealed that he knew that the cold weather would jeopardize the mission. His conviction was based on evidence from a previous launch. A year earlier, in 1985, Discovery lifted off on a cold January morning. The temperature was just 11 degrees Celsius, the coldest launch conditions prior to Challenger's liftoff. When Discovery's rocket boosters were recovered, Beaujolais found a major problem in one of the field joints. There was a large amount of soot and signs of scorching around the O-rings. Beaujolais believed the cold made the O-rings rigid and prevented them sealing. On further examination, he noticed how close Discovery had come to catastrophe. The O-rings were less than a millimeter away from burning through completely. But as Childs reads the report, he realizes Beaujolais' testimony didn't stop there.
We scheduled a teleconference between...
He made a far more damning revelation. A full 13 hours before liftoff, Beaujolais had actually tried to stop the launch.
This here, gentlemen, proves, without a doubt, that the O-rings will not seal the joint.
Had he been listened to, the disaster may never have happened at all. Journalist Jim Childs is re-examining a critical aspect of the Challenger shuttle disaster. Why didn't the vehicle blow up at its most vulnerable point, during liftoff, when all the evidence says it should have? As he reads the report, he finds out rocket engineer Roger Beaujolais predicted such a scenario at a teleconference held the night before launch. Taking part were Morton Thiokol's 4 senior managers, NASA managers at Kennedy Space Center, and in Tennessee, NASA's head of rocket boosters, Lawrence Malloy.
I don't think that you fully appreciate
seriousness.
The question was asked, are you guys concerned about launching in cold weather tomorrow? When I heard that, I almost went nuts.
I recommend that we do not launch
if the temperature is below 53 degrees Fahrenheit.
When Beaujolais warned them that the freezing temperatures made it too dangerous to go ahead, Thiokol's managers immediately advised NASA not to launch.
We recommend not launching.
But NASA considered the data to be inconclusive.
I'm appalled. How can you possibly enter into this conversation the night before a launch? My God, Thiokol, that makes no sense.
Larry Malloy states, my God, Thiokol, when do you want me to launch? Next April? Why are you guys trying to come up with launch commit criteria on the eve of a launch? Those are powerful metaphorical statements that interpret for all of us, engineers and managers alike, to mean you're screwing up my launch schedule.
In response to Malloy, Thiokol's managers put the teleconference on hold and reconsidered their position.
It's obvious that our hands are tied.
When it looked like they were changing their minds, Beaujolais made a last-ditch attempt to convince them to abort.
This, gentlemen, this is real data.
He reminded them of the burnt O-rings from Discovery's near-fatal flight a year earlier.
Look at it! Damn it, look at it!
I was literally screaming at them to look at the photos and not ignore what they were telling us. You have to be blind, deaf, and dumb not to know what these 2 pictures are telling you.
The longer the delay in sealing the joint, the greater the risk of disaster.
But this time, Beaujolais' evidence was ignored.
General manager said in a soft voice, take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat. That is the strongest metaphor to play ball that I've ever heard in my 27-year engineering career in the aerospace industry.
Okay, gentlemen, let's take a vote on it.
Go for launch.
Yeah.
All 4 managers agreed to launch.
This is Viacall, back online.
What's your answer?
It's a go to launch.
When they told NASA, Lawrence Malloy immediately accepted their decision.
I was so angry. I had to stay as composed as I could by kind of separating myself from what was going on in the meeting at that point, or else I would probably jumped up and punched somebody out.
The next day, as Beaujolais watched the launch, he fully expected to witness a ground-level blast of gargantuan proportions.
As the vehicle ignited and cleared the launch tower, so a big sigh of relief came through me. We had just dodged a bullet because it hadn't exploded on the pad.
But of course, Beaujolais' relief was short-lived.
I sit in stunned silence, and I can't tell you to this day, 20 years later, how long I sat there. I eventually found my way back to my office. I actually put my feet up on the desk and looked at the corner between 2 walls, and I fought for hours to hold back the tears because I was an emotional wreck.
If even the one man who predicted disaster was surprised at what actually happened, then surely there's more to discover about how the 7 astronauts were killed. Like the commission before him, Charles returns to the image of the black smoke leaking from the right solid rocket booster. After all, this was the key evidence that pointed to the O-rings being the cause. Are there any more clues?